Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode in the Neuro-Chemistry series. In this one, I want to start the discussion on a very broad topic, and that is hypothyroidism, or whenever the thyroid gland is not producing enough hormone. And in this video, we're going to talk about the most common form of hypothyroidism, which is Hashimoto's. So my name is Dr. Matthew Shem. I own Peak Brain Performance Centers here in Colorado Springs. And just a little recap of our last video, I want to talk about the thyroid system and how these various hormones send signals to the next organ for it to distribute its hormone and then feeds back. So on the very left-hand bar of the screen here, you'll see the brain, and that's basically supposed to depict the hypothalamus that's in the brain. And the hypothalamus releases something called thyroid releasing hormone, TRH, which then feeds the pituitary gland to release TSH, thyroid stimulating hormone. Whenever the pituitary gland releases this TSH, the TSH itself binds to receptors on the thyroid gland to tell the thyroid gland to produce more thyroid hormone, which we know as T3 and T4. Once all of these hormones have been secreted, they then feed back to the prior organs and basically let the organs before know, okay, we have adequate levels of this hormone or we do not. And if we do not have enough, let's say thyroid hormone, we're not producing enough, then that signal is going to feed back to the hypothalamus and the pituitary gland to release more TRH and more TSH to then tell the thyroid gland to produce more T3 and T4. And if we have adequate levels of T3 and T4, again, that signal is going to feed back to the hypothalamus and the pituitary gland to say, hey, we have enough of this hormone, these thyroid hormones, T3 and T4. So now let's put the brakes on releasing so much TRH and TSH at the moment. And then whenever we need some more thyroid hormone in the future, we'll send that signal again so you can start producing more TRH and TSH, which will lead to more T3 and T4 production. So when it comes to hypothyroid cases, or in said a little bit more layman, is whenever the thyroid gland is not producing enough thyroid hormone. So what are the things that you might experience or might see whenever you have a hypothyroid condition? First off is you may experience weight gain. You may also feel an intolerance to the cold. You may be fatigued. You may experience excessive fatigue upon exerting yourself physically, shortness of breath, hoarseness in your voice. Your memory may become impaired. You may experience paresthesias or sensations that run down your limbs, numbness and tingling type things. You may experience a mood impairment, maybe constipated. Women may experience infertility, muscle weakness, dry skin, and even some people have hair loss. So whenever it comes to the most common form of hypothyroidism, according to this article, it says that in the United States, autoimmune thyroid disease, aka Hashimoto's, is the most common cause of hypothyroidism. And I've actually heard that it can be up to 90% of hypothyroid cases are actually indeed Hashimoto's. So in this article here, they reference something called the Wickham survey, and they shown that almost 30% of individuals with positive TPO antibodies, which we'll talk about later, and normal thyroid function develop frank hypothyroidism, aka Hashimoto's, in the following 20 years. So you may not actually have any problem with the actual thyroid gland itself, but if you have these antibodies, in the next 20 years, you will develop Hashimoto's. And then this percentage doubles in those who have additionally marginally raised TSH levels, which we'll also talk about here in a minute. So what is the progression of Hashimoto's? So on the very far left-hand side, the very beginning stages of Hashimoto's is what you'll see is there will be normal thyroid production from the thyroid gland, thyroid hormone production, so T3 and T4, you'll produce normal levels of that. The pituitary gland will be producing normal levels of TSH, but you will have positive TPO and or TGB antibodies, thyroid peroxidase antibodies or thyroglobulin antibodies. And so with that, what are these antibodies? For one, these are really, really important markers because a lot of your primary care providers are not going to run these markers. And the reason for it is because basically whenever we run these markers, we're looking for autoimmunity. And your primary care, most primary care providers are not going to run these extra markers because it's not going to change their treatment. If they're looking for thyroid conditions, and let's say particularly since we're talking about hypothyroid conditions, if they're looking for hypothyroid conditions, the only thing that they're going to do is look for a thyroid hormone production level, so T3 and T4, maybe a TSH. And from there, if you have low levels of thyroid hormone, they're going to give you the thyroid hormone. The problem with when it comes to autoimmune mediated hypothyroid cases, aka Hashimoto's, Hashimoto's is an autoimmune condition. And what that basically means is now whenever we develop down the line here and we get to at the end here, we'll talk about overt Hashimoto's, and that's basically frank hypothyroidism, and where the thyroid gland itself is not producing enough hormone. Now, when it comes to Hashimoto's, the reason that is because now your immune system is attacking your own thyroid gland, leading to you experiencing this lack of thyroid hormone production. So on the very, very early stages, this is where we want to catch things. It's called euthyroid Hashimoto's, and that's whenever you have this level of autoimmunity where your thyroid gland is being attacked, but we don't yet have any destruction of the gland itself. The gland is still producing adequate levels of hormone. But like we said before in the last slide, is if you have these TPO or TGB antibodies, you will develop Hashimoto's in the following 20 years. So this is a great place to catch things early before they develop into those more severe situations and before they start messing with your actual thyroid hormone quantities. From there, once you've passed up euthyroid, you go into subclinical Hashimoto's. And with that, what you'll see is you'll see positive TPO antibodies and or positive TGB antibodies. And when I say positive, I just mean elevated levels that you'll see on your lab panel. From there, the thyroid gland will be producing adequate levels of thyroid hormone, but the pituitary gland will be releasing more TSH. Now, why would that be? Is if you have this autoimmune condition and now the immune system is attacking your thyroid gland, you're going to start producing less thyroid hormone. But like we talked about before, is it's on this negative feedback loop. So as your thyroid gland starts producing less hormone, the pituitary gland is going to sense that and say, hey, we got a lowering level of thyroid hormone, so let's release more TSH, thyroid stimulating hormone, which will tell the thyroid gland to produce more hormone, and then it normalizes your levels again, okay? From there, the last one is called overt Hashimoto's, and that's whenever you have not only positive thyroid peroxidase antibodies as well as thyroid globulin antibodies, but your TSH is also elevated, and now you're starting to see reactions to where your thyroid gland just can't compete anymore with the destruction from your immune system, and the immune system is eating away at the gland so much so that now you are seeing a diminished level of thyroid hormone and you're not producing enough T4. And so these are kind of the stages that you will experience and you will see as you progress through these various stages of Hashimoto's. And of course, the ideal situation is to catch it in that euthyroid case. But it's not always the case in the fact that, especially if you're going and seeing your primary and they're doing a routine thyroid panel and they're never checking for those antibodies, the TPO or the TGB antibodies, you're never going to catch it in those early stages, but you may be symptomatic. And then from there, your provider may say, well, your thyroid's fine, so it must be something else. When in reality, this could have been the case the whole time, and they're just going to let this thing, imagine like a ball rolling down a hill, and this is just an infinite hill that things just keep on rolling down, and eventually your symptoms are just going to get worse. Your thyroid gland's going to get a little bit more destroyed because your immune system keeps attacking it, and you don't know that you have an autoimmune condition. And so with that, you still continue eating these these certain foods that we'll talk about later, or putting yourself in certain environments that are immune reactive, that lead to your immune system attacking your thyroid gland even more. And then your symptoms just keep on piling and piling and piling, and we never get to the answer of your problem. So I hope that you enjoyed this class. I hope you're able to learn something, and hopefully instill a little bit into you in the fact that obviously things are much better whenever you handle them at the earlier point, and why it's so important to, whenever you have blood work, and particularly ran, is for your provider to run a full panel and to be able to look at these various things and catch things in that early stage before they get more severe. So I hope you enjoyed that. If you learned anything, please feel free to drop it below. If you have any questions, email me or give my office a call. Other than that, I hope to see you in the next one.